Is the iPhone a direct competitor to the Nintendo DS in the video game space? No, but I think the devices, they are competing, because I used to bring my iPod everywhere, my regular old iPod Classic, and I used to bring my Nintendo DS everywhere, and I still do bring it a lot of places. When it comes time for me to decide to buy a Nintendo DSi instead of an iPod of any type, then yeah, they are competing. Now, when it comes to, there's a lot of talk of the DS, well, the PSP, the iPhone replacing the DS or wiping out the DS or making the DS and the PSP obsolete. I really don't think that's going to happen. When it comes to the touchscreen capabilities of between the DS and the iPhone, I think the touchscreen really, the fact that DS has that second screen really allows a lot of potential for the touchscreen as to be dedicated just to input that the iPhone will never basically have, because it has to share space on the screen for input and output. I've read an article lately talking about, how it's basically saying that Nintendo DS, the user base is mainly young children, and those kids are growing up and they're going to want iPods, therefore the DS is going to, become, fade into obscurity, and the iPod's going to dominate in terms of games. That totally, it overlooks the most important feature of one of the most important parts of the Nintendo strategy with the DS, is that they got a lot of older people that were already gaming, and older users who weren't even gamers before, to pick up the DS. I mean, my mom has a DS Lite. She's not afraid to bring out her DS in public and, play on the line at the, waiting around at the DMV or a restaurant or whatever. And I see it a lot in the city in Manhattan and on the Long Island Railroad, on the subways. Adults aren't afraid to play games on a dedicated game system. It's not like, yes, look cool factor and the image, and it has a, let's face it, like, it's not like, would you rather have this in public or this? Now, yes, it's a factor. Yes, this does look cooler, a lot more chic and sexy, and this looks very toy-like. But it's not like that's an issue. I mean, taking the DS Lite here, it's a nice-looking piece of hardware. It obviously takes its cues from Apple, and I think the new DSi, it looks even better. So it's not like anyone who is going to look at a system, any real gamer that's all about the games and all about, well-informed gamers, is going to look at a system and say, I'm not going to buy that system because people will think, people will call me names on the subway. No real hardcore gamer is going to buy a platform for games based on what other people are going to think of them. And if you are one of those people, I think you should probably get some kind of self-help course. Now, for the games themselves, does the iPhone have a platformer of the caliber of New Super Mario Bros., of Kirby's Canvas Curse, which makes a platform making excellent use of the touchscreen? And the fact that the iPhone really doesn't have a stylus, in lots of ways it's a plus, but in terms of games, the finger, I'm not sure how much precision you could get out of that, or if you could really have done a game with the level of touchscreen acuity you need just using your finger. Yoshi's Island DS, another platformer game. I cannot see a platform game of this level of complexity being done on the iPhone or iPod Touch, just because it doesn't have buttons. Now, what the iPhone does have, with its ability to download games, very cheap, very inexpensive, quick casual games, it does that really well. That's going to be a strong point. WarioWare Touch, if that came out today, would it really be better suited on a cartridge or as a download for the DSi maybe? Excuse me there. Now, Electroplankton is one of those sort of casual, sort of artsy, almost sort of more of an application than a game than, anything that would normally be sold on retail. It sold for like 20 bucks, very limited production run. Nintendo knew it wasn't worth mass producing this. It didn't have enough appeal to warrant the shipping, the packaging, and the cartridges. But now, on Nintendo DSi, where now parts of Electroplankton are being sold for a couple of dollars each, and that format, the downloadable content format, is really working well. Now, Brain Age. This is a game that I would probably play more often, except when I don't feel like bringing the cartridge with me along with an actual proper, game like Mario or Zelda or something. Now that there's a downloadable version of Brain Age, this game would have worked well as it's working well as a download. I would play Brain Age more often now that it's in download form, now that I have a DSi to play it on, the express version of it. Now, the thing is, would that casual sort of mom really going to be able to get access to this if they're not seeing it on a store shelf? Who knows? Now, feel the magic. Not Nintendo's, but another one of those games that I could see that could work well on the iPod Touch. This is, one of those things the iPod format's probably going to be really strong at. Personal Trainer Math, an application, that really wouldn't, it's on a cartridge, but I'd be a lot more willing to use it if it was just, I could just download it to the system on the DSi. A lot of these $1 games, I don't think they're really going to be of the caliber of, a $30 game like a Zelda game, a Super Mario game, a Pokemon RPG. It's not on the same level. That's like saying that people are going to stop paying $30 restaurant bills because they can get a plain bagel and a quarter pint of juice at the deli for $1. What I think is happening is, years back even, that Nintendo's ambition for what they wanted to do with the DS is outpacing the hardware itself. Within a couple of years, I think we're definitely going to see a new DS more powerful. It's going to be more download-centric. And I think that's going to be really important if they want to be able to be an attractive alternative. It's going to have a better music player probably. If they want to be an attractive alternative, if they want to compete head-on with the iPod Touch, then I think they're going to probably have a better music player. It's going to have, the games are going to be most of the games are going to be on a download format, and I think there's going to be a card slot, but that's really going to be more for the legacy games. Now, handheld gaming in general is really blossoming this generation. It started back in the early 90s when Metroid 2 was released exclusively on the Game Boy. It was the first time that a really big sequel had for a home console game was released exclusively on a handheld, and it wasn't a side story or a little cash-in. It was the true, legitimate sequel, and that also went for Kid Icarus exclusively. Kid Icarus 2 was on Game Boy, and The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening on Game Boy really started that. But it wasn't until the DS and the PSP you start seeing a lot of developers really take the handhelds more seriously. You see the Final Fantasy 12 sequel on the DS. Now we see Metal Gear Peace Walker on the PSP, a full-fledged sequel, not a little side story like Metal Gear Acid was really in the PSP's lifespan. iPhone, really, the iPhone is really sort of completes this trilogy, this sort of trinity, I think, that are really going to have handheld games be taken more seriously, are putting a new game-capable device in a lot of hands that wouldn't have touched a dedicated device, and I think that's expanding the gaming population in the same way the Nintendo DS and the Wii have, so that's very exciting. It's making handheld gaming more and more mainstream, really something that's very exciting if you're a handheld gamer on any system, be it the PSP or the iPod or the Game Boy or the DS. And that's pretty much my opinion. Thank you very much for watching.